Tell me when it's live.
It says you can't turn your phone while recording. Rotate your phone.
Is it that one?
You're good.
I'm good? Okay. What's up, Facebook fam? It's episode 31, and I don't have the Chinese wall behind me today. If you guys are watching this on Facebook, I'm going to take the next 3 minutes to let people get the notifications. This is my podcast. This is Counterculture with Lujan. This is episode 31, Power Over Porn, a conversation with a culture warrior. I'm really excited today, guys. Feeling kind of nervous because this is the first time I've had a guest. I feel like I'm Ellen DeGeneres. It's kind of cool. So yeah, guys, just maybe text your friends if you would be so kind. Perhaps share this. I record this on Facebook to draw attention to the podcast. Counterculture with Lujan is primarily a podcast found on all the major podcast players. Everything is housed at aaronlujan.com. And today we're going to be having a conversation with a very good friend of mine. And he has a organization called Power Over Porn, curriculum organization. I'll let him describe it. I'm probably butchering it, but I hope you guys enjoyed today because this is exactly what my podcast is all about. Countering the culture, providing solutions to some of the problems that we are experiencing and define some of the social norms. So my man over here that will be joining me shortly will let me know when it's 3 minutes. So if you're watching the pre-recorded version, you can skip to 3 minutes and that's when the podcast will begin. Are we doing good on the recording on Audacity? Are we still getting good sound waves over there? Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. This is crazy. I actually have somebody with me today doing this podcast. So
that's how it's showing up though.
Is that how it's showing up? What's up?
That's how it looks like. That's how it's showing up on.
Oh, is it? Well, people can turn it, right?
Yeah, should be able to.
Right. Yeah. So they're gonna have to because if we changed it, it would be we'd be like it'd be tall and it'd be really close. Yeah, this is good. Hey, this is ghetto podcast. Ghetto podcast. That's what it's called. So how are we doing on time?
We're close.
Cool. You already hear my guest back here. That's
30 seconds.
30 seconds. You're already listening to the guest. So forward to minute 3 if you're watching the rebroadcast. Happy Sunday, folks. We're about to get into a lot of trouble right now because we're about to engage in one of the controversial issues of our times, which is pornography. So buckle up, put on your helmets, your mouth guards, your body armor. We are live. Welcome. Today is December 9th, 2018. You are listening to Counterculture with Lujan. This is episode 31. Today's title is Power Over Porn, a conversation with a culture warrior. Thank you for joining me, guys. I am very excited today, primarily because I'm not freezing in my basement by myself in front of my Chinese restaurant wall. I'm actually in a really comfortable couch about to have a great conversation with a very good friend of mine. And we are going to be discussing pornography and the bondage that it has on our generation and other generations arguably, but primarily this millennial generation today with access to the internet. And today I wanted to just talk to my good friend about this issue. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Steven Bridelson with Power Over Porn. It's like the Tonight Show. What's up, brother?
What's up, my man?
I love you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. We're like almost on my lap, man.
Yeah, look at this. Oh, we're getting close.
What's up, guys? So yeah, welcome to the podcast.
Dude, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're gonna look at each other.
Yeah,
and look at the camera.
We'll do this pro style.
Yeah. So this is my friend Steven, and his organization is Power Over Porn, and I'm just gonna let him introduce himself and his organization.
Yeah, dude, thank you. What an honor it is to be on the show.
Thank you.
This is cool. I saw, because I was behind the camera there, some of our friends watching, so it's pretty cool.
Well, what's up, guys?
Yeah, what's up? What's up, Tish Hammer? I saw you on there.
What's up, Matt Tishammer?
Yeah, so man, when I was 11 years old, stepped into pornography. I was on my newspaper route and just out there as a little 11-year-old making money, and a man was throwing away this box of, I'm guessing it was a man, threw away a box of pornographic magazines. My little 11-year-old mind thought that looks awesome, and so I picked it up and didn't know that the devastation that would bring into my life. And so from that point on, really for the next like 14, 15 years, struggled with pornography, and all the while growing up in a Christian household, and so feeling the shame of all that and the tension of this is wrong, but I can't stop it. And so today's gonna be awesome. I think we're gonna bring a lot of hope to men and women even who are struggling with this. And so marriages are being torn apart, and we want to help put those back together and bring hope to men and their marriages.
Awesome. So the bottom line is would you call it an epidemic in the culture?
Yeah.
So I guess my first question, Stephen, is what is the problem with pornography? Let me play devil's advocate. Let's just get into it right off the bat. I'm a consenting adult, and I am a big boy, and take children out of it, take married men out of it. Let me play devil's advocate and say I'm a single guy, I'm an adult, and I'm viewing pornography, and it's arguably, and I use arguably in quotes, willful actors who are doing this willfully. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's a really good question, because that's something that our culture is asking right now. Like, what's so bad about this? And there's a lot of people who even would say you should use this in your marriage. And so there's a whole side to our culture that says this is good. What's happening right now, though, as far as brain science, let's just talk about it physically. Physically speaking, the brain actually gets rewired in the process of the porn addiction. So if you take a brain scan, and a lot of people have seen this, but if you take a brain scan of somebody who's addicted to cocaine or heroin, it looks a certain way. And then you take a brain that's normal, there's no addiction there, it's totally different. Now, if you take a brain scan of somebody who's addicted to pornography, it looks like the cocaine addict's brain. So it really messes with the brain. It's an addiction. Okay. It's a dopamine fix that takes more and more and more or different of that drug of pornography to fulfill that need that the brain has been wired to.
Interesting. So you would say that it's clinically, medically, scientifically as addictive or an addiction like a illicit drug?
Yeah, I would say so. And that's just the physical side of things. And then you talk about emotionally. What that does is a lot of times it isolates a man. So, for instance, most guys who struggle with this don't want to talk about it. As far as from the Christian worldview, most guys don't want to talk about it because it's something that they know is wrong. So there's this internal battle between I know what's right, but I can't stop. And then what happens is when people stay in that is they start to justify. And they say, well, look, it is good. Why is this so bad? And so that question a lot of times comes from somebody who's stuck in it and just doesn't want to come to grips with this is not right.
So do you think there's also a lot of shame associated with it? So then it would affect their confidence level, perhaps, their self-esteem? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about if you're wanting to train or run, I've done a bunch of running in my past. And if I'm wanting to train and run, and I don't run, I don't practice at the level and at the pace that I want to. I feel like, oh, man, I'm not so confident about going out there the next day, and so this kind of builds. So what happens is the self-discipline of saying no. If it's not there at all, it doesn't get better. So guys who are struggling with this, and that was for me for years, struggling with this, felt like, man, I remember being a youth pastor and teaching a message and then leaving there wondering, man, am I gonna slip into this pornography again tonight? Like that fear. Yeah. So there's definitely no confidence there as far as am I strong enough? Can I beat this thing? Can I win this battle? Confidence, self-confidence, just goes way down.
One of the things that I was thinking about too is how does it affect relationship, like as men? How does it affect our relationship with women, with dating? Let's take single guys. Let's take married men. How does it affect natural relationships with women?
That's a really good question. Yeah, so I know for me, definitely made me see women as objects, which is a major issue. I mean, when we look at a big problem in our culture, that is that's a massive issue.
Yeah.
The objectification of women, even men too. Like that happens as well. But so for one, I begin to see people as things.
Sure.
And that's whacked.
Sure. And
like,
therefore, you're not able to have a real relationship and get to know someone and who she is. You're just looking at her as an object, a sex object.
Yeah. And it really comes down to it's really selfish for me to use somebody as a thing, and that's what it was. You know?
So how big of a problem is this? Is this something that's just affecting just a couple 1-2% of the population? Can you talk us through maybe some statistics, some numbers on how big is this problem?
Oh man, it's huge. I don't know. I would say so. The church, as far as church statistics, that's what I do most work in. In the church, it's the stats say, and there's 2 different studies, that approximately 70% of men in the congregation struggle with this.
And these are Bible-believing, church-going.
Yeah, these are regular attenders.
Regular attenders. So would you say that it's arguable that outside of the church, non-believers could be at least relatively close in number?
Yeah, and I also think that the number of 70% is low.
You think it's low?
I think it's low because
more
than that I've if I was asked 10 guys, I would probably run into 9 of them that would say. But I think outside the church, it's even more.
It's even more
because of honestly, like the world. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they practice this? They might look at it from the clinical viewpoint of it's not good for me as my health.
As a health.
As Christians, we know it's wrong. We know it's like this is not right. It's not okay.
Spiritually.
There's a certain morality there's a worldview that we carry.
Yeah.
But outside of the church, I think it's way higher.
Outside of the church is way higher. So are you saying that, like, with the advent of the internet and being able to carry these computers called phones in our pockets, that it's just pretty much free for all at this point? If you really want it, you can just get it, right?
Yeah. And then it's funny how even like web browsers are set up to where you can have a private screen, and then nobody knows that you run that. You just delete the screen. So it's almost as if our culture's so used to it that there's been ways around the history of your browser being viewable by somebody else.
Interesting.
And obviously, you can trace anything back,
One of the things I was thinking about, Stephen, is do you think that everybody's like shamed? Do you think that it's possible that some men can just like not have shame and not feel convicted and be enjoying pornography and not have any care in the world with regards to it? Or do you think that for most part, everyone has, even at the very minimum, a little bit of, this is wrong.
Yeah.
Like I'm a little shamed. Like I'm not going to go to Thanksgiving dinner and tell my parents, hey, I was just watching XYZ yesterday.
Yeah, so you're saying like, is it, repeat your question?
Yeah, like, so I guess what I'm trying to understand is, do you think that there's some men that are just not convicted at all and that are not shamed and that are just viewing this as it's just a normal way of life? Or do you think that some men definitely, or most men definitely feel shamed and convicted?
Yeah, I think that first, I guess if you look at like, for my story, for instance, when I was 11 years old, I knew it was wrong, but I still participated in it. It was filling a void, if you will. It wasn't filling a void, but that's what I was trying to do as an 11-year-old, trying to solve some problems in my own life with this thing. So at first, I knew it was wrong, and then as it continued on, I continued to know it was wrong. But I think for sure that our consciences can be seared to the point where we don't feel as bad about it.
Interesting.
It's like it's one thing if you steal a little pack of gum, right? Like you steal that, you might feel like, oh, that was wrong. But if you don't like confess that or even want to change from that, like I don't want to feel that anymore. It can turn into, oh, let me steal a bag of chips. Let me steal this thing, and it gets bigger and bigger, and then to the point where it's like I don't feel bad about it anymore.
Right.
And you start justifying like, oh, they make all the money, so I can steal. You know what I mean? Like you can. I think we can justify anything.
Right.
We can make ourselves, it's called self-deception, we can make ourselves believe that we are in the right, and even though in our souls we know
that it's
this
wrong.
Is wrong.
So you're saying it's affecting our relationships with women because we're not able to get to know them personally. We're just looking at their bodies or we're looking at them as sex objects.
Yeah.
It's affecting us as an addiction. So you're saying that like a drug, like alcohol, like food, it could just interfere with our lives. It could interfere with our work. It could interfere with just regular relationships and just life in general, because like any addiction, you're constantly living moment to moment trying to fill that void. So you're thinking about it, it's preoccupying you. I'm just kind of talking through some of the challenges. And then I think one of the things that you and I talked about offline that I thought was very interesting is that pornography is like a medication. Can you talk to me about that? Because I think that was an important point. And let me just preface it by saying that when you shared this with me, it's not that men are going to the pornography always necessarily for the sexual gratification, but they're going to it to medicate themselves. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So that's what happens for most men, is that it's really this thing that we reach out to. So I like to say porn is not the problem, but it's a failed solution. So quote that.
Yeah, hey, tweet that.
Tweet that.
Hashtag failed solution.
Yeah, so like a lot of times, people would point at porn as being the problem.
Right.
But it's really just a failed solution. So
solution to what?
Yeah, exactly. So like, for instance, I noticed that looking back, I didn't know this at the time, but I learned this when I was probably 23, 24 years old, that I was using pornography to feel accepted, to feel worthy, and to kind of fill those voids. I didn't feel that way. And for some reason, I bought into the lies that I was unacceptable and that I was unworthy of a relationship with God. Like, that's kind of where it came back to. Now, so I reached for pornography for those reasons. So the way I share it with guys is that, like, pornography is never, so the woman on the other side of the screen never rejected me. So that fills that void of wanting to be unconditionally accepted. Like, I believe that I believe every human being has a need to be unconditionally accepted.
Absolutely.
And so that kind of, it's a failed solution. It doesn't work.
Right.
It just keeps us wanting more, and it doesn't fill the void of actually knowing that we are loved and accepted.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Does that kind of answer?
Yeah, that does answer your question, because what you're saying is that sometimes men come home from a long day of work and they're tired, and this is like going for the cognac, right? This is like going for the pill.
Right.
It's a way to just kind of self-medicate and sort of numb you from even just the day-to-day. It's an escape.
It's a way to not feel.
It's a way to not feel.
Guys,
so it's a numbing agent, essentially.
For sure, yeah. I think a lot of guys use it as that. There's a lot of triggers that bring up the use of pornography, stress, being tired, being angry, and so like there are other outlets for that are healthy.
Sure.
But pornography is easy. You can hide it. You know what I mean? Like,
so, and it's not on your breath. Like, if you're drinking before work, they're gonna smell that, dude.
Exactly.
You've been hitting the bourbon. It's like 9 a.m. But with the porn, they're not
you
gonna
can hide it.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's the reason why it stays so hidden. Is that, number one, there's a lot of shame. So people are ashamed of it. They don't want to talk. They don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
They don't want to bring it up to somebody else, because what are they going to do? They might reject me. See? So it's this revolving problem that the big way to get out of it is confession is a big way, but honestly, like, understanding who we are in Christ. That's my belief, at least, is understanding who God created me to be.
Sure.
And stepping in that and walking that out. There's a lot more steps to it, but those are some of the first steps.
Well, talking about shame, and I just feel kind of convicted to share maybe my porn story.
Yeah, I would love to.
Because I think one of the ways that we can get past the shame is if we all just open up and we're just not shamed anymore. So I remember being, I think, 12 years old. I used to live behind an old dairy. And as a 12-year-old kid riding my bike, it's kind of similar to your story. An old dairy farm. Yeah, okay. I apologize. I always say dairy. Dairy farm.
Most people probably know what it is.
Dairy. We're out in the country.
We're bound to have a dairy.
Down there by the holler.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
And I would just, mid-90s, riding my bike, making little jumps and driving around riding around my bike in this empty old dairy farm down by the holler. And I get down to this little area and I see like all this like magazine papers, and just kind of curious, went over to look at it, and I was exposed to hardcore adult pornography as a child, because at 12, 13 years old. And I can attest to this, that something psychologically negative happened to me, because looking back as an adult, first of all, I believe that it's a perversion of something beautiful.
Yeah.
tweet that. That little vein. Tweet that.
Tweet that. Tweet it.
Sorry, humble me. But the other thing is that, you know, it was interesting. It drew me in. It was like the drug. There was something there that was just, because I really hadn't understood sex yet at that age.
Right.
So I remember just spending so much time looking at this. And I just remember being just negatively obsessed. It haunted me. It bothered me. It conflicted me. And it was definitely not something that a child should ever go through.
Right.
And then, you know, I never really, and again, it's the 90s. There's no internet. I remember going into the grocery stores and seeing the magazines. Remember in the old days? I don't know if that's still the case. The magazines behind the plastic over behind this guy. And I wanted to look at those magazines because I wanted to continue that exploration of this interesting but yet damaging weapon, if you will.
Yeah, like dark. It's just.
It was like drawing me in, but I knew that it was bad for me.
Yeah.
And it was like this toss and turn. And then, so, you know, fast forward a couple years, many years actually, and I'm in my mid-20s, and now the internet's available. And, you know, I can't even really honestly say at what point I decided to look at pornography again, but I remember late at night going onto my desktop computer and looking at pornography and finding myself chasing more perverted pornography.
Yeah.
And it was getting to a point where I said, you know what? Like, I realized that like there's a line and that this was too wicked and too evil.
Yeah.
So I just kind of like, for a good reason, repelled back and just completely shut it off.
That's awesome.
And you know, I don't know if that's everyone's story. That's my story.
Yeah.
But I just feel like it's important to talk about it because do you think out of 10 men today that are under the age of 40, out of those 10, if you had to guess, Stephen, how many of them have seen pornography?
Oh, I would say 100% of them.
So 10 out of 10.
With our culture.
With our culture, we've all seen.
Yeah, you know the definition of pornography is any type of, it's like a picture, it can be words that elicit a sexual desire. So, I mean, you really think about it, like what we see just even during like Super Bowl or whatever, just that the commercials.
Eliciting lust, eliciting.
Yeah, so it's like we see that you drive just on the main highway and see a billboard, and they're using sex to sell.
Sure.
And so yeah, I think 100%.
100%. So if you're a guy and you're watching this, you've probably seen pornography. We've talked about the dangers of pornography, and we've talked about what it can do. One of the things I'm curious to know is, as married men, how does it affect our marriages?
Man, that's a big question, and that's something that we're really trying to tackle. One thing I think needs to be said to wives, just on behalf of men, is sorry. Mm-hmm. Sorry that we're sorry that this has become an issue that has come between you, if you're a wife watching this, you and your husband. We're sorry on behalf of him. We're sorry. Now that doesn't. I think a big thing that happens though in a lot of ways is that a wife can become offended because she makes it about her. Like, am I not good enough? Am I not sexy enough? Mm-hmm. Am I not beautiful enough?
What's wrong with me?
Yeah, what's wrong with me? Exactly. Mm-hmm. So all these questions are going on in her mind, and rightfully so. I understand that.
Yeah.
But really, like, you listen to both of our stories, and this was an issue that started for me. This was an issue that started when I was 11 years old.
As children, I was about your age as well.
Yeah, so 11, 12-year-old. I mean, I didn't know my wife at that point. Mm-hmm. Marriage wasn't even in my mind at that point. You know what I mean? So,
sure.
So this didn't start with her. Mm-hmm. And that's something that my wife and I, she's probably watching this right now, that we have had a lot of conversations about, that this issue is not about you. This is actually an issue that I need to be healed. I need to be healed and restored of. And so
like, if you came into the marriage with an alcohol problem and you were just this raging alcoholic, you know, she wouldn't necessarily connect her to the alcohol problem.
Right.
But she's going to connect herself to the porn problem because it involves sexuality. It involves things that are reserved for a marriage.
Right.
So it's interesting that you say that, because I think what it tells wives and even their husbands is it's not about your wife.
Right.
And she's not to blame. This is a personal problem with the man, with the husband. So that's good.
Yeah. That's well put.
And another thing that I'm curious about is, what is it doing to children? Like, is there anything unique, say to 12, 13, 14-year-olds versus if you just kind of are introduced to it at 20 or 30? Like, is there unique issues for children, like 8, 9, 10-year-olds? Like, is there anything unique to point out that how it affects them differently than older people?
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about the desensitization.
Yeah. Desensitization.
Yeah, that word. Yeah. I think the earlier someone's exposed, the more, I guess, desensitized they can become to, like, see, God created sex. He created it. Like, He gave it to it. Like, sex.
So for all you people who think Christians don't like sex, it's an awesome thing and we love it.
Yes, God created it. Like, He gave it. This is a gift.
It's a gift.
It's also to resemble our relationship with Him in the sense of how intimate and close we are with Him.
Sure.
So God gave that to us. And so I think what can happen is when we learn about sex through the culture, through our current world, we learn of it as a commodity, as a thing that we can go do, and we can just. It's free.
Hookup culture.
Yeah, hookup culture, one night stands. We can just have it as much.
It's like a cigarette. If you want to have a good time, pay money or just sleep with someone you meet at the bar.
So as the earlier kids learn about that, I think that can sear that. Now the opposite can be true. Like, we've had this conversation with a couple pastors of mine. Like, if we're the ones to first bring up sex, pornography, the tough topics that just don't get brought up enough for young men. If our dad does that for us, it totally reverses that issue. So now it becomes a strength. It can become a strength because now we are aware that this can be a big problem.
Sure.
And we're also kind of we're informed, where most other kids learn about sex from TV or magazines or
the homie down in the playground, like I did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like it can have the opposite effect. Like learning it in the right way. Like, this is what sex is. This is what,
Yeah, because a lot of times, like, I grew up like in a household and in a time and a culture where like sex was like, you don't talk about it.
You didn't say it.
Yeah, you don't say it. That's the bad word, and all my Latinos, you know what I'm talking about. No, it's true. Hispanic culture, it's like, the cochino, like, don't talk about that. Put that, we don't talk about that. That's not right. And so, but because we are naturally sexual beings and it's very easy, especially men are visually stimulated, that there's this conflict of like, well, I'm bad because I like it, but then you're designed to like it, and it's just torment.
That's a good way to put it. It's very tormenting.
It's very tormenting, and what's, I think, liberating and freeing is understanding what sex really is. It's a beautiful gift designed for people who are in love with each other in the context of marriage, because I think I read a statistic, and forgive me for digressing a little bit, but I just feel like sharing it, is they said, and Google this so you can find the source. I don't have time. I got a real job. that married couples report to enjoy sex more than unmarried couples. That unmarried couples, the hookup culture, the people who are sleeping around, generally reporting to have mediocre sex, but it's the married couples that are having very good sex. So don't believe the hype. Sex is much better in a committed marriage than it is with the floozy at the bar. Sorry. I just keeping it real, dude.
Awesome.
So cool. We've talked a lot about the problem. So talk to me about your ministry. Talk to me about what you're doing to free young men from this oppression.
Yeah. So kind of going back to my story. When I was in my early 20s, 20, 21, 22, struggling with this, Jesus started whispering to me. This might sound weird if you're not a Christian, but the Holy Spirit was speaking to me. He said, I'm going to use this issue you have to help other men in your life. And so he was saying, hey, I'm going to use this issue that you have right now. I'm going to end up using it. And so it was good. It was bittersweet. It was, on one end, it was like, that's awesome, because then I know that I get free from this someday. So that was hopeful. And then there's the other side. It's like, oh man, that means I'm gonna share about this. If I'm gonna help people out with it, I know you did. But if I'm gonna share about this, that means I'm gonna have to share my story on some level. And so I was kind of like scared about it. So 3 years ago, whenever I'm free from this issue, like the Lord showed me principle after principle after principle of how to beat this thing, how to win, and not be struggling with this.
Sweet.
And so it was a process. I wish it was just over like that.
Sure.
But now I look back and I don't wish that, because I learned so much through the process, which is a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
You know, right? But so the Lord showed me thing after thing after thing on how to beat this thing. And so 3 years ago, the Lord said, okay, now put together something that's going to help other guys. And so he was calling me out on what he planted, the seed, you know, hey, I'm going to use this.
Yeah.
And so now, like, he's using it.
Okay.
So now I share my story, give guys a place to at least be able to relate. That's the biggest thing.
Sure.
Is that most men have nobody to talk to about this.
Sure.
There's all kinds of lies that keep that hidden.
They're ashamed of it and keep it to themselves.
So number one, we create a space for guys to say, hey, look, I actually, I struggle with this too. So
no more secrets.
Yeah, no, we let's come clean. Let's open this up, and then give a step-by-step way to say, okay, here's if here's the problem, how are we gonna win?
Would you be able to give us a preview or a general idea of some of those steps?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah, so our course is called Power Over Porn.
Okay. And
we use a framework that I designed. It's a 5-part framework. It's called Power Play. I'm a hockey player. So the point of a power play in hockey is that both teams have 5 players, 5 skaters and a goalie. So 5 skaters and a goalie on each side. When one team commits a penalty, they now have 4 skaters, and the other team still has 5.
Yeah, I remember that.
Another penalty, if you get another penalty, you have 3 guys on the ice, and the other team has 5.
You better hope you have Wayne Gretzky on the team.
Yeah, so this team with 5 has the power play, has the advantage.
Sure.
So this team is going to get worn out. This team is going to win. And if you put a team out there with 5 guys versus 3, they're going to win every time. So
absolutely.
We help guys get the advantage. So P is an acronym, POWER. P stands for position. Who are we?
Okay, position.
We have to know who we are.
Okay.
We are not less than.
We're not animals?
Yes, we're not animals.
You mean we didn't come from apes?
We didn't come from apes.
Oh my gosh, man.
That's what I believe.
Okay.
So we talk a lot about that. So we talk in the context of the church. I don't know, you have Christian listeners, you have non-Christians, whatever.
I'm not James Dobson, this is not TBN, but yeah, we got both. Absolutely.
Yeah, so as a Christian, I believe that God has adopted me. Mm-hmm. He's the King of Kings. What does that make me? That makes me a prince. Now, I read about David and Goliath. You've read
about it this morning.
You did?
Yeah,
oh, dude, this is good. This is good
stuff.
When David gets on the scene of the battle between the Israelites and the Philistines, David and Goliath. David gets onto the scene, and everybody on David's team is all freaked out. Mm-hmm. They're scared. They don't want to face Goliath. Goliath's huge. Goliath's a 9-foot giant.
Like, you want to go for it? Go for it.
Yeah. So Goliath starts talking smack.
Yeah.
Right. And David comes right back and talks smack right back to Goliath, and he says, "I'm gonna take you. I'm gonna feed you to the birds of the air." So in other words, he's like, "I'm gonna take your head." Yes. The Lord's gonna hand you over into my hand. He's gonna hand you over to me, and I'm gonna feed you to the birds. Mm-hmm. So he does exactly that, and he defeats Goliath.
Sure.
We see that now, but like when David went into that scene, you can read this you can just read the story in 1 Samuel. He comes onto the scene having confidence that he's already fought the bear, he's already fought the lion, and the Lord's going to hand Goliath over. So we as Christians, we need to step into offense. We need to play the attack mode rather than like. So we are what we say a lot of times. Mm-hmm. Like we get what we say. Sure. Power of life and death is in the tongue. Yep. So if I'm talking to you, I'm like, man, I'm struggling. This is how I encounter most guys, and I understand it because I was there. I'm struggling with this. There's no way out. I feel like everything I try to do doesn't work. I'll always struggle with this, and I'm just never going to get free. So that's typically the posture. Mm-hmm. So what we teach is we need to flip that. Imagine LeBron James steps onto the court. He doesn't step onto the court. I'm just saying. I'm just like using a figure that most people know. Yeah. Most people know LeBron James, and LeBron James steps on the court with an attitude of like, "Come at me. Yeah. I'm going to win this game. This is my game, and I'm going to win it."
Yeah. He knows he's the best.
Yeah. So we as Christ followers, we're winners in Christ, and that's not just a
bumper sticker.
Yeah, it's not a bumper sticker.
It's a historical fact.
Yeah, like we were baptized into his death, and we rose with Christ. Mm-hmm. we have the same power that raised Christ from the dead living inside of us. I'm not going to be afraid of pornography or lust or all these things. All that stuff died. And
because it's LeBron James against the JV team, basically.
That's what I mean. So that's our O. P stands for position, who we are in Christ. Sure. O stands for offense.
Offense.
So we're taking the offense against this thing.
Okay.
I could go deep into this. I don't know how far you want
this is perfect.
Okay.
So we know our position, which is we are who we are in Christ, right?
Right.
And our identity. And then the O is the offense, meaning we're going to tackle it head on,
right,
on the offensive posture.
Right.
And then the W?
Yeah, W stands for winning.
Winning.
So we talk a lot about strategy in that part.
Practical steps.
Yeah, very practical. How do we take this idea, this principle that we are who we are? Like we are princes on this earth. Like we are not to be messed with. We have the same power that raised Christ from the dead. There's a lot of truths we could talk about, but how do we take that? How do we take this offensive approach and make that play out in our?
Can I time out? Let's say you're not a Christian.
Yeah,
and you're hearing this and you're just like, Christ and what and all this Christian stuff. Like this is not my cup of tea. I'm looking for a 12-step, screen filter. Like it may be frustrating for some of these guys because they don't really know what we're talking about.
Right.
And so what would you say to them, like just as a timeout, like what would you say to them, like how do I deal with this if I'm not a Christian or if I don't understand what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a really tough question.
That is a tough question because
Is it a fair question?
It is a fair question.
Okay.
Yeah, this is really good.
He can beat me up live on Facebook, and I'll just press charges. And everybody can see. Take what's up.
I watched Creed last week. That got me off No, man.
I might be little, but I'm crazy. Go ahead.
Wow, man. That's how I was too. Okay. Wow, man.
Yeah.
But no, that's a really good question. I tend to look at things through the biblical worldview.
Sure.
So it is kind of tough to put myself in that position.
Absolutely.
But at the same point, like you got to understand that you were wired for change. So if you're wondering like, okay, I'm not a Christian, but how do I win? Number one is you need to understand that you are wired to be able to change. All the science out there tells you that you can change. So it will take a lot longer I believe for a non-Christian to take the leap from struggling with this to not struggling, because there's a whole different power behind it.
Sure.
But I do believe we were wired for change. So,
sure. And that's a scientific basis that I think we can all agree on.
There's hope, is what I'm saying. It's
Absolutely.
not like you have to be a Christian to win this thing, but to have the deep healing and restoration, you're going to need Christ.
Yeah. So get baptized if you're not a Christian. This is counterculture. I don't care. Mark Zuckerberg can take me on Facebook. I'll find another way to get the message out. So we talked about W, winning, and then there's the E now. What's the E?
E stands for experience. So this is what's missing for a lot of men, a lot of Christian men who I talk with. Yeah. This experiential relationship with God. Okay. So we have the Holy Spirit inside of us. Like He has deposited His Spirit inside of us. Yeah. And in Scripture it says that the Holy Spirit is a counselor and a comforter. Those are two different names for the Holy Spirit. So the counselor, imagine a counselor that you never talk to or that you never hear from.
It was like my high school counselor.
But so we're supposed to have this experiential relationship with the Holy Spirit that we can speak and then He'll listen and then He counsels us on our life. Okay. But it takes listening. Yeah. It also takes speaking. So it takes a relationship with God to have that. Okay. And so I walk guys through like this very real, like, okay, how do you hear from God? Yeah. Like how does that work? Sure. That sounds so mystical. Like how does this work? So we lay that out.
Okay, cool. And then the R is lastly?
Yeah, it's results. Results. So an old mentor, he's dead at this point, but it sounds so morbid.
He's dead, but
whatever. No, he was an awesome man of God. But anyway, he says that results are often harsh, but they're always fair.
That's good. You can tweet that too.
Yeah, you can tweet that. That's from a book called Compassionate Samurai. It's a really great book. But he used to say that all the time. Results are often harsh, but always fair.
Interesting.
So what he's saying there is that we a lot of times we don't like the results we have in our life. So they're harsh, right? But they're always fair. Sure. My results that I get in my life are directly tied to my commitments. Now that doesn't mean that people don't do things to me and that
you get in what you put out essentially.
Yeah. So like
you reap what you sow.
Yeah, we tie it. So the result stands for like if we're getting X result, then we're committed to that result, which is hard for people to hear that.
Yeah.
But we need to go back to our commitments. So what are we committed to? It's a way to kind of get back into who do I believe I am, and what am I thinking about all the time? So
could I say that if I'm not getting the results that I'm wanting, if I'm still finding myself, looking at the phone and looking at the things that is just, it has me in bondage, it's a direct result, of the commitment that I'm putting into ending those habits.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's awesome, man. And so have you, can you talk to me about maybe people that have gone through the program or yourself, sort of some of the liberty and some of the freedom that they've been able to experience and what they're saying on the other end of this?
Yeah, I would love to just be able to read one right to you.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have that on my phone.
It's okay, man. You just kind of, paraphrase.
No, so like I've had a lot of guys go through the course, and one of them says like, I'm paraphrasing because I'm trying to think of it, but basically like he talked about how our course it taps into the power of God to break free from this. It's not about behavior modification. Behavior modification happens after root level change happens. And so we talk about that a lot.
So you got to get to the root first.
Yeah, we go to the root. See, here's the thing. Like everybody wants to pull fruit off of a tree. Oh, I don't like that fruit. Well, I don't like that. Well, you're going to be spending all your time just picking fruit that you don't like. Well, go to the root.
Yeah.
And you solve the problem. So
may I just interrupt? Because the behavior modification is like, oh, well, don't have a smartphone anymore. Have like the old 2003 flip phones, or don't or change your browser settings, or do all of these tie your hands behind your back, or like there's all these like things that are out there that really are just behavior modifications. But I think, Stephen, what you're talking about is getting to that root level, which is what the POWER is all about, the power of porn. So continue, please. So forget behavior modification, get to the root. What are they saying? Yeah,
they're saying that, hey, this course leads to to the power of God changing and transforming things in the inside, and then it comes out.
Okay.
So I'm just paraphrasing one testimony I have in my mind, but yeah, then another guy was like, I didn't know how big of an issue this was until I started to understand as I was laying this stuff out in the course. Yeah. It's a 35-day video course. It's very extensive. It's just I walk guys through step by step on how to break free from this. So I try to take as much of what the Lord showed me through that process in my early 20s, and bring that to the table. And so a lot of that's connecting with them.
So can you tell the people that are watching, the people that are listening on the podcast, if they want to get more information about this, what do they do? Where do they go?
Yeah, this is great. So I put together a 3-part video series. It's totally free. And you can find that at GameChanger365.com.
GameChanger365.com. Just making sure they have that.
Yeah, that's good. You can get there through poweroverporn.org.
Poweroverporn.org.
But the same guys who are struggling with pornography don't want to put porn in the
word
browser.
Porn in the browser. So hashtag fair enough.
Yeah, right. That's right. So GameChanger365.com.
We'll just go with that.
Put your email and your name in there. You get those 3 free videos, and then you can go sign up for the course from there. But it's a good chunk of content. You'll know really quickly. You either want to take this course or you don't. It's powerful. I've got a lot of good feedback from that.
So. Oh man, you guys, this is free. GameChanger365.com. You just put your email. Your email. Now I can't even talk. Your email, your name. You get the 3 free videos. Is that right? Yeah. Cool. And you guys, we just want you guys to be free. Yeah. There's no reason why kids, why married men, single men, even girls. I heard that it's affecting women as well. Yeah. Should be under this sort of bondage and oppression. It's hurting our relationships. It's just as addictive as drugs. It's interfering with life, and it is shaming us. And it's not allowing you to be the person that you were created to be, to live in the fullness of your potential and your calling in life. And we just, Stephen and I just want to see guys just be freed from this, right, Stephen?
For sure. And I think that's the ultimate thing that happens out of this is that this issue that has plagued and shamed so many men, when this issue gets dealt with, healed and restored, like watch out, because the potential of that man who's freed and restored to like be able to take like action on his dreams and live out his full potential, watch out, man. That dude is on fire.
Absolutely.
This is usually the biggest issue that plagues men, and so once this thing's gone, dude,
men are able to be real men. That's great. Well, Stephen, I think we're probably at 30 minutes, right?
Probably.
What does it say?
It's 10:07.
So we started at. We've been in this for an hour.
I don't know. No, probably a little after that.
A little after, whatever. You guys, thank you for you guys, thank you for listening. This was Counterculture, episode 31 with Aaron Lujan. The podcast is available on all the major podcast players: iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud. Not SoundCloud. I apologize. I always say SoundCloud because it used to be on SoundCloud, but it's not anymore. It's not on
anymore.
SoundCloud.
Oh, come on.
It's not on SoundCloud anymore. They want me to pay, and I don't have no money for SoundCloud. But I'll be releasing some rap music on SoundCloud. Just kidding. Maybe. I don't know. I used to. I can rap. I can rap, dude.
Dude.
One of these days, I'm gonna do a freestyle.
Oh, dude.
It'll be a.
Why not now? I'm just playing. I'll put you on
Man,
the spot.
put me on the spot. I don't have a beat, man.
I'm just kidding. Let me get you.
No, man, I can't do it.
I'm playing.
I know. But you guys can find the podcast on all the major podcast players. Everything is housed at aaronlujan.com. But more important than that, GameChanger365.com. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time. Peace.
Thanks, brother.
Yep.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yep.